In the final weeks of 2025, the long, bitter argument over Venezuela's oil entered a new phase, one driven not only by economics, but by force, law, and a presidency in Washington determined to reshape the map of energy power in the Caribbean. For years, Venezuela's oil story had been one of collapse, production falling, infrastructure degrading, and the state oil companies' capacity shrinking under the combined weight of mismanagement, corruption, and isolation from capital markets. But by late 2025, the U.S.-Venezuela oil crisis was no longer simply a question of sanctions and shipments. It had become a confrontation over who could control the movement and the money of Venezuelan crude itself. In December 2025, President Donald Trump escalated U.S. pressure in the region with an announcement framed in absolute terms: a total and complete blockade of sanctioned oil tankers entering or leaving Venezuela. The administration presented the policy as an effort to choke off illicit oil trade and deprive the Maduro government of revenue. Critics and legal experts questioned the legality and warned it could be read internationally as an act of war. The blockade was not just rhetoric. U.S. forces began intercepting vessels the administration said were linked to sanctioned Venezuelan oil flows. By mid-January 2026, the United States had seized additional Venezuela-linked tankers in the Caribbean, describing the actions as part of a broader effort to assert control over the country's oil trade. The stakes were enormous, because Venezuelan crude is not simply another export commodity. It is the central pillar of the country's fiscal survival. When oil revenue falls, the state loses the ability to import food and medicine, maintain basic services, and pay security forces and public employees. In Venezuela, where politics and petroleum have been entwined for generations, the collapse of oil income does not merely weaken the government, it destabilizes the country's entire operating system. By late 2025, the Trump administration's approach increasingly fused oil enforcement with national security framing. Reports described a widening campaign that combined maritime interdictions with strikes on alleged drug smuggling boats, along with rising casualties linked to those operations. Then, in early January 2026, the confrontation crossed a threshold that few had believed possible. U.S. forces captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Reports described explosions in Caracas and U.S. statements that framed the operation as decisive and transformative, an unprecedented move in modern hemispheric relations. Within days, a new political reality emerged in the capital, defined not by an election or negotiation, but by a sudden vacuum of authority. In the aftermath, Delcy Rodriguez, previously a central figure in Maduro's government, emerged as the central governing figure and moved quickly to consolidate power amid deep internal divisions. U.S. officials moved rapidly to expand Chevron's authorization to operate in Venezuela under sanctions policy, adjusting the terms under which oil could be produced, exported, and compensated. At the same time, Washington asserted control over Venezuelan oil sales and prepared to market tens of millions of barrels that had previously been stranded.